There are structures that are more than just stone and rock. When you look at them, it feels as if time itself stops. You feel how small humanity truly is and how unknowable the past can be. In the heart of India stands a temple carved from a single mountain block, so vast, so flawless that even with our modern technology, rebuilding it would be nearly impossible. Its name is the Kailasa Temple, and this temple is not just a marvel of engineering, but a mystery that pushes the very limits of the human mind. Was it truly built by humans or crafted by the hands of the gods themselves? If you're ready, let's begin unraveling the secret behind one of the most astonishing creations in history. To uncover the truths hidden in the dark, welcome to the discovery of mystery. In India's Maharashtra state, a massive cliff carved into volcanic basalt rock stretches across the land. At first glance, it may look ordinary, but when you look closer, you find yourself standing before some of the most inexplicable structures in human history. The ancient Ellora caves, and among them, the most mysterious of all, the ancient Kailasa Temple. As the world's largest monolithic structure, carved entirely from a single rock, the Kailasa Temple continues to baffle researchers even today. According to historical records, completing such a monument within the claimed time frame would have been impossible. Building it with such perfection is nearly impossible. And above all, constructing it with the technology of that era should have been utterly impossible. Yet there it stands, towering before us in all its glory. Could it be that the truth behind all these impossibilities is far different from what we've been told? Carved not with conventional construction techniques, but by excavating downward from the top of a mountainside, Kailasa rises approximately 33 meters high, twice the height of the great Parthenon Temple in Athens. We don't know exactly who built this massive structure or when. However, the oldest surviving written source is a medieval text called Katha Kalpataru, and the legend it tells gives us an intriguing version of Kailasa's origin. According to the story, a local king fell gravely ill, and the queen vowed to build a temple dedicated to Lord Shiva if her husband recovered. She promised to fast until she could see the top of the temple, the Shikara. After the queen made her vow, the king miraculously recovered and construction began. But as it would take many years for the temple's peak to become visible using traditional building methods, it became clear that the queen would have to fast for a very long time. At that moment, a master architect, known in legend as Kokasa, stepped forward. He claimed he could carve the temple downward from the mountain's summit and make its top visible within just 1 week. According to the legend, that's exactly what happened. The temple began to be carved from the top of the mountain downward. The queen soon saw the magnificent peak of the temple, broke her fast, and thus the Kailasa Temple was completed rapidly from the top down. This legend is the only written account we have about the temple. And though it contains mythic elements, one detail has been confirmed by modern archaeology. The structure truly was carved downward from a single mountain rock. Beyond that, everything else remains an enormous mystery. Yes, the text was written in the Middle Ages, but it doesn't clearly state which king or what exact time period it refers to. Still, because mainstream history dislikes leaving blanks unfilled, it attributes the temple's construction to King Krishna I of the Rashtrakuta Empire, dating it to around 756 CE, and claims that the construction took 18 years to complete. But not only is there no historical evidence for that claim, it also makes no logical sense. Why? Because if you take that explanation at face value, the structure itself becomes scientifically and technically impossible. Let's start with the 18-year construction claim. Around 1,500 years ago, there was no advanced technology, and calculations show that roughly 400,000 tons of rock were removed from the mountainside. Considering that a single truck carries about 20 tons, that gives you an idea of the massive scale of excavation we're talking about. What makes things even more absurd is that removing 400,000 tons of rock in just 18 years would mean extracting 61 tons per day. Even if workers toiled like slaves for 12 hours a day, that's still 5 tons of rock removed per hour. And that's not even counting the precision work. As you can see, this wasn't a rough carving job. It's a masterpiece of intricate craftsmanship. Given that level of detail, completing it under those conditions and within that time frame would have been nearly impossible. But what makes the whole thing even more perplexing is this. Where did those 400,000 tons of rock go? Neither at the Kailasa Temple nor anywhere in the 1.5-kilometer-long Ellora cave complex is there a trace of such an enormous amount of debris. We're talking about rubble equal in weight to 2 Empire State Buildings, and there's not a single clue about where it disappeared to. It's as if it simply evaporated into thin air, isn't it? As fantastic as it sounds, we'll soon see how ancient Hindu texts touch upon this very mystery. Remember, the temple was carved from the top of a mountainside, through layers of hard basalt. Creating something this immense and this precise with the crude tools of that era defies everything we know about ancient construction. Because in a project like this, the margin for error has to be nearly zero. You're carving into a mountain. If you make a mistake, you can't start over. And yet, Kailasa stands as a structure of flawless symmetry. That's no coincidence. The temple's very design embodies the dual nature of the universe. It was built to represent Shiva's cosmic balance of creation and destruction. The central axis symbolizes equilibrium, Shiva himself, while the perfect left-right symmetry represents masculine and feminine energies, adorned with motifs of Vishnu and Shakti. The acoustics, too, were engineered to resonate perfectly during rituals. No AutoCAD, no laser alignment, no massive trucks or explosives, no trace of 400,000 tons of debris, and no evidence whatsoever of who actually built it or how. Now, do you see why I called it an impossible structure at the start of this video? Everything up to this point was an attempt to explain the mystery through logic and science. But since that clearly fails, it's time we dive into the strange and the unknown. But before we go any deeper, wait a second. If you enjoy uncovering mysteries like this with me, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button, because what I'm about to tell you goes far beyond logic. Now back to our story. At this point, we come across a legend that has been passed down for generations. It says that Kailasa is not a human creation, but a divine structure built using a special tool given by Lord Shiva himself. The location of the Kailasa Temple is no ordinary spot either, because directly opposite it lies a place of extraordinary importance, not only for Hindus, but also for many other Eastern faiths, Mount Kailash. The temple was built precisely in alignment with it as its earthly reflection. Mount Kailash, believed to be Lord Shiva's throne and celestial abode, has been the subject of countless paranormal accounts. I already have a full video about this mysterious mountain on my channel, and I highly recommend watching it. The link is in the description. According to legend, Shiva, who sits on his cosmic throne atop Mount Kailash, commanded Vishwakarma, the divine architect of the gods, to build a temple on earth that would represent his throne and serve as a place for humans to worship. Vishwakarma was no ordinary craftsman. He was said to design the palaces, flying chariots, and even the weapons of the gods, using technology far beyond human comprehension. And according to myth, he built the temple using a technology described like this: celestial rays descending from the heavens in a vibrating cosmic sound. Here's where things take a turn into the fantastical. Ancient Indian texts like the Samaveda describe how sound vibrations, frequencies, can influence the material world and even alter the nature of matter itself. This concept is known as Nada Brahma, The idea that the universe is sound, that all creation stems from vibration. I know this sounds far-fetched at first. Indians are masters of poetic exaggeration. But here we're talking about Vedic science. And in truth, India is home to countless structures that were built using techniques far ahead of their time, many of which have scientific explanations. For example, ancient legends often speak of the gods' enchanted musical instruments, songs so powerful that they could shake mountains or shatter stone. Those curious can look into artifacts like Sarasvati's Veena or Krishna's flute. Today we know that sound, or more precisely vibration, has a profound effect on physical matter. Even Nikola Tesla experimented with this concept and nearly caused an entire building to collapse during one of his resonance tests. So when the myth says the mountain began to take shape under a cosmic sound from the heavens, yes, it sounds fantastical, but there may actually be a scientific basis behind it. Myths often describe such phenomena through divine or supernatural imagery. But throughout history, humans have interpreted advanced technologies or unexplained events through the lens of gods and spirituality. But the story doesn't end there. Remember, it also mentioned those divine beams of light descending from the heavens? You'll find these sacred rays throughout Hindu mythology, and they are often portrayed as destructive forces. For example, the fiery beam from Shiva's third eye was said to pierce mountains, while the god Indra shattered obstacles before him with thunder-like bursts of light. The great craftsman Vishwakarma used this same light to forge weapons for the gods. So what we're really looking at here might be a kind of divine energy, one that could melt stone, shape metal, and destroy or create with immense power. And what's the first thing that comes to mind? Of course, lasers. Yes, we're venturing into extreme territory here, and it would be wrong to claim that this definitely happened. But what we do have is a structure carved flawlessly from solid volcanic rock, something truly extraordinary. No one knows who built it or when. Not a single trace remains of the 400,000 tons of rock that should have been produced during its construction. And when you combine all these factors, especially the complete disappearance of that debris, it's hard not to wonder if there's something more to the story. But now it's time to broaden our investigation, because Kailasa is just one part of a much larger complex stretching across 1.5 kilometers, the Ellora Caves. And now the mysteries we tried to solve above the ground begin to greet us below it. Surrounding the Kailasa Temple are 34 massive man-made caves that make up the Ellora complex, 12 dedicated to Buddhism, 17 to Hinduism, and 5 to Jainism, forming what looks like a shared spiritual center. Once again, no one knows exactly when they were built, while the general belief is that different religious groups carved them between the 6th and 10th centuries as places of worship. When we look closely, we see that every structure is laid out in a precise, organized pattern across the area. In fact, recent research has revealed traces of even more caves, long buried by forests and soil, leading experts to believe there may be as many as 100 caves in total. Once again, we're facing a place whose origins are shrouded in mist. What makes Ellora particularly mysterious, however, is its almost supernatural acoustic engineering. In some of the deep Buddhist monastery caves, the acoustics are so perfectly tuned that when a monk chants a mantra on one end, the sound resonates on the other side as though an entire choir were singing. Some visitors have even claimed to hear faint drum beats and bell chimes echoing through the walls when no one else was present. This phenomenon has been reported so frequently that it eventually gave rise to the legend of the spirits of Ellora. But the mysteries of Ellora don't stop there. When we dive into more esoteric territory, we find that theosophical researchers such as Helena Blavatsky, Annie Besant, and Alice Bailey assigned a very different meaning to this region. According to them, the Ellora cave complex was built along a major positive ley line connected to Mount Kailash and served as part of an underground city network. They believed that within the tunnels beneath the caves, members of humanity's original root races guarded ancient wisdom, and that these subterranean passages were part of a global system of gateways used by those beings to move between their world and ours. Now this is where things really enter the realm of the extreme, and personally, I've always found theosophists a bit eccentric. But there is one undeniable fact. In this region, especially around the Kailasa Temple, there are indeed tunnels descending underground. These entrances are currently sealed off, but according to locals, they lead to a royal chamber beneath the temple, said to contain vast treasures. If you listen to the theosophists, they claim these tunnels lead to other underground cities. But if you ask archaeologists, they'll tell you the tunnels are part of an ancient water drainage system. And indeed, the temple's water distribution network still functions remarkably well, even after hundreds of years. Despite being located in a region with heavy rainfall, the structure remains perfectly protected from flooding and erosion. So, what's the truth? Is Kailasa truly a product of divine technology, a gateway to subterranean cities, or is it simply an extraordinary example of human engineering? For now, it's impossible to give a definitive answer. But speaking as someone who has studied similar structures across Asia, I can say this. There once existed a system that spread from India across the region, known as Vedic science, the lost knowledge of the ancient world. And the structures built using that system, that knowledge, display an astonishing level of engineering mastery. Their ability to shape stone with precision, to make foundations that became more stable through earthquakes, to design advanced water and infrastructure systems, to align buildings with cosmic patterns, and most impressively, to craft acoustics with unbelievable accuracy. All of it points to an ancient science far ahead of its time. Unfortunately, that knowledge was gradually lost. And as its sophistication faded from memory, people began blending these structures with myths and divine stories, like the ones we've discussed. The ironic part is that Hindu tradition itself says the Vedic wisdom was taught to humans by the gods after the Great Flood, a remnant of divine pre-Diluvian knowledge. So no matter how you look at it, the roots of this science seem to trace back to celestial beings. In the case of Kailasa, it's likely that techniques far beyond the ordinary capabilities of that era were used. Still, there are 3 questions no one can answer. First, why was this temple carved specifically into a mountain? Second, how was it completed in such a short time? And third, where did 400,000 tons of debris disappear to? And that's not even counting the rubble from nearly 100 surrounding caves. Whether we'll ever find the answers to these questions, I don't know. But one thing is certain, ancient India still has so much to teach us. Perhaps one day when those forgotten Sanskrit manuscripts gathering dust in libraries are fully deciphered, we might rediscover the ancient wisdom humanity has long forgotten. And maybe then, we'll finally realize that the past was far more advanced than we ever imagined. So what do you think? If this video sparked new questions in your mind, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to continue exploring mysteries like this together, please remember to subscribe and like the video. See you on the next discovery.